And we are live. Welcome to Google Ads Unleashed, guys, to the next episode. Again, we've got another interview today, which I'm really, really chuffed with because I've known Nick for a very long time now. And he is he's probably the best Google Ads and PPC guy I know. So I am really, really honored to welcome him today to the podcast. Thank you very much for doing this, Nick. And I think the listeners will get really a lot of value out of this. So probably best if you want to maybe say a couple of things about yourself and where we know each other from, etc. And obviously we've been working together now for almost 3 years, which is amazing. So share a little bit about that.
Oh, well, thanks for a lovely introduction. So I've been doing PPC work for, oh God, it must be over 7 or 8 years. I lost count at this point. I think when you turn 30, you sort of lose track of when you started, right?
Yeah,
I think it's been 8 years, and it's the only work I've ever done. I got into it because I somehow landed a job at a startup company when I was straight out of uni. I had a marketing degree, which didn't really cover a lot of digital stuff. It didn't do a lot of digital marketing in the degree, but I realized on
Didn't
the
you
job
say you
that,
did law as well? At
yeah,
first, isn't it? Yeah.
yeah, I
That's
started with
mental.
law, but I'm just not cut out for it at all. I'm really more of a spreadsheet person. And I ended up in this job as kind of a junior marketer and realized when I got there how desperately they needed digital knowledge, how little digital knowledge they had. They were older people running the business. They had absolutely no clue about anything. So through necessity, I kind of had to learn it. And I
Yeah.
think that's how I would imagine a lot of people kind of get started. They don't realize how big of an opportunity advertising on Google is, or a lot of people, they don't even know how Google makes money. If you ask an average person on the street, like, how do you think Google has all this money? They have no idea. They are
Yeah.
completely clueless. So yeah, it was kind of born out of necessity. And I've worked in a few other companies since. So I worked in-house in a large retailer in Wales, where I'm from, and I've worked agency side where I met yourself, and seen everything in that time. It's been quite a journey.
Yeah.
I've
You know
worked
what's
on everything
interesting?
from the. Oh, go on.
Yeah, well, you know what's interesting is like a lot of people who I speak to, including don't matter if it's an agency partner or if it's our clients, etc. No one seems to like be learning what we do as in like a job. There's only one person, and that is the only apprentice, which I've actually taught in PPC.
Yeah.
Right, she was a proper PPC apprentice. She works actually for the Millennium Center nowadays, the thing in Cardiff.
Yeah.
So it's crazy to see how many people sort of come over different. I didn't realize you worked at that startup at the beginning. I thought you went straight to the company we can't name.
Yeah. I think that's how I would recommend getting started. So I worked for free for 2 months while I was learning, because I was basically just a graduate and I didn't have any knowledge. And I think getting into PPC, it's people don't tend to hire you unless you've got some knowledge or you've learned, and that's the hardest bit. Getting into PPC as a profession is incredibly challenging when you're brand new, because people want the trust, like the trust factor. So talking to me now, and I've managed budgets that spend millions of pounds a year, I'm a safe bet that if I manage your account, it's not going to be too bad, even even if it's like not the desired outcome. At least you've got a safe bet that this guy has probably seen every kind of problem that could happen, and he's dealt with it before.
Yeah.
So people want that in a new PPC, and when they hire you, they want you to have that experience. I was quite fortunate that these guys didn't really have a lot of choice. They were a startup. The business failed after 2 months, and
Oh, really?
yeah, I worked for free learning PPC. I just treated it like PPC school, and I'd use that as an opportunity to go on to other ventures where I could gain more experience. But it's incredibly hard to get into PPC when you've never managed an account before. You have to get that experience somehow, and it's very
Yeah,
hard to get someone to trust you to actually look at theirs when you're 23 years old or 22, you're straight out of uni. But
yeah.
yeah, I was quite fortunate that I managed to make that work because, yeah, it was a startup. It wasn't a particularly large budget I was managing, but I learned a lot, and it got me where I am today. So I'm very grateful for that. Even though I work for free, I'm very grateful that I just got to look at a Google Ads account, and that's really the first starting point. You don't learn you don't really learn PPC until you're doing it, and that's the hardest part of getting into the industry. If you just read about it online, you don't have the perspective or the accumulated knowledge. You haven't experienced how do I deal with this problem. You haven't seen the variety of problems that can come up, and a lot of the time, if you do read about it online, especially from Google's point of view, you get the completely wrong information anyway. They just want you to spend the most. So, um,
It goes to a certain extent. At the moment, a new problem I dealt with this morning, right, is we've got a client. They sell travel pillows and Linux, so we look after them. And the Google rep has actually bypassed us to talk directly to the client to pitch demand gen to them, and said you should really be trying this. So I have to deal with the aftermath of the client now asking, why are we not doing this, when actually, well, I told them before that this is going to come out and we shouldn't really be doing that. But now the Google rep went to them and said, listen, we should definitely do this demand gen thing. And in the end, it's just a waste of money, right? And
yeah,
that's pretty much what I said to our client this morning. It's it's an absolute waste of money. That's why we're not doing it. It's my job to sort of lead you into the right direction as well in terms of what we should be doing and not doing. Interestingly, we actually got a really sensational YouTube video coming out with them. So they've spent tens of thousands of pounds in production to get this done. So funny enough, demand gen might become an option, but Google is just after people's money. Simple as that. People don't
yeah,
seem to be realizing this. They're not on our side, right? Well, some of them are. There are exceptions, but generally speaking, they want the cash.
yeah.
Yeah,
They don't care about like things being as efficient as possible. Like, as
yeah,
far as they're concerned, if they can see something's making some money and it's got a good click-through rate, that's what they want to see. Just
yeah.
spend the money. Why don't you raise budget? And when they bypass you and just go complete, like, straight to the client, and they start filling the client's heads with these ideas, they tend to overpromise and underdeliver. They're not on the hook in the same way that an agency is, where
No,
as an agency we have to give good advice, because if we don't do something good, the client's going to potentially lose money or not make as much as they would have. Whereas
and
if
fire
Google
us.
suggests
Simple as that.
something, yeah, they literally don't have the repercussions. If we mess up, we could potentially lose a client. If Google mess up, nothing bad happens because they're Google and they've got a monopoly. So it's yeah, it's not always the smart move to trust them at face value. Always get a second opinion. Sometimes they'll say things that are correct. So to give them the benefit of the doubt, I remember in 2018 when I think it was a summer of 2018 when smart shopping launched. And at the time, I remember thinking, well, we've seen smart display. It was terrible. No
Yes.
one used it. At the time, smart display was awful. And a lot of the other smart campaigns that they had tried just weren't working. And we were very much set in our ways. And I was very reluctant to want to try smart shopping. But it turned out it was really good. It was great for everybody. The vast majority of clients benefited from it. And yeah, that's sometimes they do they do something good and they do make a good recommendation, but it's kind of balancing it and just look at what their motive is, especially when they're trying to tell you about bid prices or budgets or something.
Yeah,
They've only got one agenda, right?
absolutely. So, what a lot of people don't know, by the way, I'm not sure if I mentioned this. So, obviously, we've been working together for a couple of years now. Before that, you worked at a company and you specifically dealt with feed optimization as a general thing. So, you've got quite an aptitude with e-commerce. Before that, that's where we know each other. We worked at an agency here in Wales. And before that, then that is where you sort of properly start your career. You worked at a business, obviously a large e-commerce business, right? So, whilst a
Yeah,
lot of things are changing, some principles have not changed in 7, 8, 10 years, right? And
yeah.
that is something I wanted to talk about today specifically with you because I know you literally, I think, the most knowledgeable person I know on this subject. And that is feed optimization and title optimization, because this is something that evades a lot of people. I've taught a class yesterday, a seminar of all e-commerce business owners, and I talked about Q4 prep, right? I've done a podcast about this as well, which is, I think, just came out this week. And it's about doing the basics right? And literally, I melted people's minds by some of the concepts that I explained. I think what's going to be really interesting for our listeners is maybe from like an expert as yourself to give us a little bit of insight into that. So, what feed optimization is and why it's important, because the majority of listeners will be e-commerce business owners or e-commerce marketers. So, this is something that's massively underutilized, underdone, and arguably the most important thing part about doing Google Ads for e-commerce businesses. What's your thoughts?
Potentially, yeah. So yeah, I've long said that feed op is probably the most neglected thing in PPC. In the whole of PPC, feed optimization is the number one thing that gets ignored. The reason it gets ignored is because it's a bit more boring than other things that you can do. People get attracted to this idea of oh, what if I change this demographic? What if I change this audience? What if I target this? That's the kind of things that in my experience, clients get very excited about. But what they never want to hear is, can we go into your shopping feed and restructure all your titles, please? That is just a bit that I think people they struggle to wrap their heads around. But it's a shame because this is the area of PPC where I would say the most potential to improve results exists.
Yeah,
Um, shopping ads are very heavily weighted on the title. So to put into some perspective, um, I would say of the kind of qualities a shopping listing can have that will decide whether it gets listed in an auction or not. The title is probably going to be triggering that ad to service 80% of the time.
yeah,
So the title is an incredibly important thing. How you structure a product title in Google Shopping can have enormous consequences on what search terms you appear on, how relevant the traffic is, how much money is made, how many people click on your ad versus everyone else's. And I think it's often just completely ignored. um, People don't want to fill out feeds very well. Just generally speaking, what a lot of people's mindset is towards Google Shopping is, let's just get a feed up and we'll just shove it into Merchant Center. Is it approved? Yeah, let's run it. That's it, done. That's that job ticked off. And they don't think about it being another area, just as you would change your ad copy in a search ad, changing your product title in a shopping ad can yield the same result, if not better. Where I think people really go wrong is they completely ignore the idea of putting attributes in the title. So a lot of products, especially things like hard goods or electronics, or if you're selling furniture, for example, it's really good to improve things like the color of a sofa or the size of it. Key search terms that people would use.
yeah,
How much does it weigh? What color is it? Is it for male or female? All of these things come into play when people are searching, especially the number one industry I could really give an example for this on, the clothing industry. People will type in very specific search terms for the type of t-shirt they want to buy or the type of dress they want, or they'll want the material, and I want it this size and I want it this color. And um, very often people, if you're just listing it as red t-shirt and your brand, that isn't going to cut it. You're going to get absolutely destroyed in the auction by the other PPCer who was willing to introduce the attributes to their titles. And yeah, if you haven't optimized the feed, including the attributes where they belong, so color, size, material, gender, weight, and so on, and you haven't also put those into your titles, you're just missing out on an enormous amount of searches over a period of time. It will really add up, and there's a lot of lost money by not optimizing the title. So
Absolutely.
my job used to be to do this full time. I used to just do this for clients as a full time job. Every single feed that came in had barely any attributes filled out. So my job was to kind of fill in those attributes and then apply them to the title. And then after we had done that, we would run a shopping campaign off of a new feed, and we'd measure the result versus the original campaign that was running. So it was kind of like a split test with title up.
Mm-hmm.
And almost always it improved. Like almost always, we got a better result off the back of it. And we were not only that, we would often run products that weren't even selling in the last 30 days. So we would reduce a feed of just products that weren't selling before, nothing was happening with them. They weren't getting any traffic, nothing. And we just improve the titles and improve the attributes on those products and then see if we could generate new money. And this was a really, really powerful approach, and it completely transformed some businesses. They had incredible returns off the back of it. One of the kind of age-old problems with shopping, and PMAX especially today, is you'll often find that you have a handful of products kind of at the top of your campaign that get all the traffic, all the sales, 80% of the sales coming from 20% of the listings.
Yeah,
Um,
is it called Pareto principle? I think. Yeah,
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 that's right. Yeah. So um, if you take the remaining products and go, okay, what isn't working, what isn't getting traffic, what doesn't get clicked on, look at those titles and look at the attributes that are there on that product in the merchant center, you will often see that nothing is optimal. A lot of things are missing. There's a lot of gaps, and just filling in a couple of them will increase the amount of searches you're available to show for. And very often, there'll be really good products that just didn't have a fair chance in the auction. So title optimization and feed optimization gives a product like that a chance to make money.
yeah.
And that's incremental growth that you don't get from just raising the budget on a top performer. So yeah, very powerful thing to do in PPC that really just gets ignored by, I would say, a very high majority of businesses.
Do you think there's a reason why, besides the ones that you said, it's not sexy and so on? Is there sort of common challenges that maybe marketers have? Is there maybe something that can be made easier, or to help them? Something, for instance, I see very often is just the sheer number of products. Right, like a lot of people are scared if they have 5,000 SKUs or something. Oh my God, I'm never going to be able to optimize all of these. So what are sort of some common challenges that you've, especially at your time with said company? I guess we can say the name. It was Shoptimize, isn't it?
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
Um, yeah.
I think some of the challenges probably the biggest challenge that I had when I was there was some say if we've got a product feed and it's got 6,000 products in it.
Yeah.
Ideally, we want to be making changes in bulk. But
Hmm.
you don't always get the freedom to do that if there's nothing to pull from. So, say if you've got a business and they haven't written product descriptions on their site, it's very hard for me to pull out the attributes like the material, the size, the color, etc., and then to subsequently improve the title because that information isn't there for me to pull in bulk by making rules. So that was kind of one of the biggest things. If people haven't even done the basics, which sometimes they hadn't, and it was quite a common occurrence that they hadn't even bothered to write product descriptions. Some businesses are quite lazy. Um, it's hard to do feed up when it's kind of like your hands are tied behind your back. You can't really do anything. Um, I think the total number of products can be, and like especially when it's a wide number of categories, that can be quite challenging. Um, Especially if the products are quite unique, or there's a lot of differences between them. If you've got a company that's selling kind of similar stuff all the time in each category, that's nice and easy. But if you've got some product categories where there's a whole mess of different things in there, and they're all kind of unique to one another and different types of thing, that can be quite difficult because you can't apply a rule in bulk, which is what
Yeah.
we're really hoping for. The more you can apply something in bulk and just set a rule, the easier feed up is going to be. I think finally on challenges of feed up is access to the feed. A lot of
Oh
people
yes.
don't
Yeah.
know how to even get into their feeds.
Yeah.
And it's a quite shocking amount of people who don't even know where do I go to do this? They have no idea that you can look at a lot of e-commerce businesses. They don't know where to go in Shopify, Magento. They have no idea. And even if they could find their feed, they don't know how to edit it. So um, just us
I'm
having
laughing because
access
it's
to it
true.
is, yeah, it's really true.
It's
That's a
something
common
we
thing.
always ask in onboarding. How's your current feed hosted? I don't know. Is it
The
an
most
API?
common
Is it an
answer.
XML file? Is it a TSV? Is it a regular upload? Is it a Google Sheet? Was it like? I don't know.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's nice and easy. If you're running a Google Sheet feed, those are always the easiest because usually a Google Sheet feed isn't going to have a lot of products in it.
No.
If you're running on a Google Sheet, you're at most going to have 30 products
Yeah.
because you're going to have to manually update it. Um, so usually a Google Sheet feed is nice and easy. If a business has a Google Sheet, that isn't a problem most of the time because that's a 20-minute job. When it gets into the thousands of products, then all of a sudden that's taking months to do, being chipped away at over time. But
Yeah. It's
yeah,
been a bit of a
definitely,
Sisyphus job then as well, right?
yeah,
Yeah, Sisyphus was the Greek guy who pushed the rock up the hill, and then every time he tried to
yeah.
come back down, the rock came back down, and he had to start again. Yeah, it's so there's obviously a sort of some softwares which we actually use in the agency as well, but which make our lives a little bit easier. Um, do you have any experience with some of them, or can they be useful?
Yeah, so usually, I've worked at Shoptimized and I've used Data Feed Watch as well, which I think is really useful, especially on larger feeds. For some smaller feeds, if you've got a product feed which is maybe, I don't know, 50 products or less, you might be able to just get away with making rules in the merchant center and not having to pay for a subscription on Data Feed
Yeah.
Watch or using an agency that has a subscription to Data Feed Watch. But if you're a big company and you're making lots of money on shopping and you'd like to make more money on shopping and your titles aren't optimized and your feed isn't done at all, um, you definitely want to be using something to apply rules in large quantities. Um, and Data Feed Watch is a very simple and I think quite straightforward tool to achieve that as efficiently as
Go-to in it.
possible.
It's our
It
go-to
really cuts
really.
down on a lot of time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just makes our lives a little bit easier, especially because with some of the clients that we do have, they have quite big feeds, and if they actually add new products in, which and they do all the time, right? They always have new suppliers adding new products in, or losing a lot of products as well. The rules just help us, like it's done, like the architecture of the rules. I think that's the tricky part. Once you get to big feeds, right, you have to become quite clever and have to have a really good understanding of how do I create rules in such a fashion that it not only applies to my existing set of products, but also will in future apply to all future products that will be added to the feed without me having to double check every single thing again.
Yeah.
So that's something that most people, I find, with especially big feeds, struggle with. Um, so that's where sort of data feed watch can be really, really, really helpful. I'm glad you pushed me to that. By the way, it's not the cheapest; it costs a few £100 a month, but I think the more we grow as well, the more useful it's proven, right? So it really saves
Yeah.
us some time and our team members as well. Um, so we talked a lot about title optim. Well, you talked a lot about title optimization. Do you have some tips on how to write the perfect product title? If listeners are now listening and saying, "Listen, holy shit, all of this is me. Like I've just been lazy. I've not done this. I should pitch to the team. We should be starting doing this. How would you go about it? What's sort of the best sort of title structure that you can propose?"
Well, I mean, that's quite a complex question because it depends on
Mhm.
the industry that you work in. So if you work in, or your products are, say, books, well, in your title, you're going to want the title of the book, the format of the book. Is it a hardcover or an ebook, for example? Who the author is, the product type. So you'd want attributes like that to kind of sell a book. Whereas if you're selling clothing, the attributes that you'd want to be including in the title would be more like, is it for men or women? So you'd put the brand name of the company that's selling the t-shirt. It's for men. It's a t-shirt. So you say, I'm wearing a Crew clothing t-shirt. So I'd say Crew men's t-shirt. And then you list attributes. So blue in size large, material cotton. So that's a pretty much a perfect product title from a very formulaic standpoint. Very often people want to put their brand name in first, and then this is what the product type is, and then list attributes afterwards. But yeah, it would be a bit flexible depending on that. One thing that's really important to remember is that only the first 70 characters are going to be shown.
Mm-hmm.
So, say if uh, you wanted to put keywords into your title and you had a really high performing keyword, say something like personalized gift or
Yeah.
something that's really important to your business that you want to appear on all the time. You can just put that into your title at the end, and as long as it's after the 70 character threshold, nobody's going to see it, and you will still get matched from it. The closer to the start of the
Yeah.
title the
I was
word
just
is,
about to ask
the
that.
more
In
important the weighting is.
Yeah, I was just
So,
about to ask that. Is there some sort of is it more important to have the core information at the beginning, or
yes,
you'd think it's more important? Yeah, so that is
yeah,
true. Yeah.
yeah. So, especially when it comes to putting attributes in, if you say if you're selling a T-shirt and you wanted to list, say, the color, the size, and the material of the T-shirt.
Mm-hmm.
Think which is the most important selling point. I would say probably size, then color, then material. Because people will type in t-shirts large, people will type in t-shirts blue. Yeah, getting those attributes kind of to the front of the title if it's really important to the sales. If you look in your search terms and you see, okay, people are converting more on size keywords than color keywords, you could maybe swap the attribute in that order. That would be an example of kind of ongoing optimization. So yeah, it's kind of dependent on the business and what they're selling and how that keyword is going to appear in the search terms report, etc. But for the most part, the closer to the start of the title the word is, the more weighting it's going to have on what your ad appears on.
That's super interesting. So you said before as well, 80% is the title, right? How much do you think descriptions are important as well, or are they important to a certain degree at all? Or should you like focus all your energy first into titles and into optimizing the data itself, and the metadata, as in Google product type, color, size, all that jazz?
So, in terms of like the total volume of keywords you're going to appear on, usually, yeah, obviously the title is the big one, and it will probably be around 80%. Description, my understanding is it does get factored in, but nowhere near as much as the title, and it does add to the odds that your uh, ad is going to show on a particular keyword. It may be 5-10%, similar for Google product category, a very important attribute. Google product category, it's literally an attribute to tell Google exactly what this thing is, so they know how to match it with keywords. That's probably more important than the description in terms of matching on keywords. But yeah, neither are as big as the title. The other attributes, so for example, I once tested this with a client that was selling furniture. We included a bunch of attributes on color and size, and then I monitored the click-through rate and the clicks that we were getting on keywords that included color and size, both of them going up quite considerably. So they also have maybe 5-10% impact on the searches you're going to appear on.
That's
So
super
all of it
interesting that you
matters.
said click-through rate, because that would have been my next question. What metrics sort of did you used to look at, especially at Shoptimized, to sort of monitor and gauge the effectiveness of the feed optimization measures that you undertook? So
So yeah, the click-through rate is a big one because what you want to see off the back of changing your titles and changing your attributes around is this ad now more relevant to the people who are searching for it? And if it is, you get pushed to the top of the auction more, you're in more competitive positions, you get clicked on more often versus your competition, and you make more money. So yeah, the click-through rate does matter quite a lot. If you're trying to look for a way to measure success, click-through rate definitely one attribute, one metric. Sorry. Um, on top of that, the total amount of traffic and is it making money that it previously wasn't? So if you've got, say, a shopping campaign and you've got products within it that aren't making any money or getting clicked on at all, and then you make some changes, and all of a sudden that product starts servicing more often, it has sales. That's an easy comparison where you can see, okay, we just made this a lot better.
yeah, that's amazing. So you mentioned one example before, where you did this with a furniture company. Do you have any like sort of even maybe a company you're allowed to say? I guess you, after all that time, you can probably say one or two companies where sort of all of these changes have led to like literally a transformation in their sort of Google Ads performance, or where you've seen like significant improvements?
Well, I think one of our former clients, Pet Printed, definitely had that benefit. We work with a company called Jawliner, who I think the feed op efforts in that have definitely
Oh yes.
seen a considerable improvement. Um, yeah, I think uh, yeah, ultimately it's kind of every time we've added attributes and every time we've made changes to feeds, usually we've had a positive impact off the back of it. But saying that, most of the feeds we look at are terrible when they come in.
That's
So
true.
it's
Yeah.
kind of a low bar to jump over. I'd say probably the majority of the time we see more sales of the back of
Yeah.
and more traffic just after they've come on, and we usually do feed up as one of the first tasks that we do for a client,
Yeah.
and usually there's a benefit, but that's also like saying we see a benefit from just fixing any problem, or like if they just didn't have ads, and then we started running ads, it would make more money.
Yes, of
Um,
course.
they usually are coming in with no work done on it. I usually, if a client comes in and they've got a well optimized feed, I'm usually amazed by this. I think I can barely think of a client that's been in that position in the past year. But yeah, usually it's going to have a positive impact just simply from the total lack of attention it's been given in the past by the business.
Yeah, I think the only time when we sort of happen to run into this is if they have an SEO agency by chance, where sort of the nature of optimizing product titles or collection pages, etc. Where and it happens to be that the feed draws upon this information.
Yeah,
That has
yeah,
happened a couple of times where we're sort of, oh, this is actually not so bad, but then you look into the feed and you're like, oh, okay, this is missing and this is missing. Um, there's, on top of that, many other things not done, like no review feeds and other sort of things that go a little bit beyond sort of normal feed op as well. Well, wow, that was mega interesting. With that, we've gone over half an hour already talking about feed stuff. There's been tons and tons of information in this. Really, thanks a lot for coming on, Nick. This is amazing. I really didn't even have to ask questions. You just shared so many knowledge bombs. It's unbelievable, and you sort of get a real good insight as well into sort of what our process is and what we kind of look at as an agency as well. So if this is anything that, if you listen to this episode and think, Christ, this is us, right? Like, we've not done any of this. I need help. I need manpower. I need intel. I need someone who can do this professionally. Then we're there. Simply head to our website and send an inquiry, or connect with us on LinkedIn. Send us a messenger pigeon, smoke signal, anything you want. And we're more than happy to look into this for you. So with that, again, Nick, thank you very much. Thanks for coming on.
okay.
No doubt it won't be your last time, because you are literally a pool of just Google Ads information. So and our listeners will really enjoy this. So thank you very much.
Great.
And on
Thanks
that
for
note,
having me.
no problem. On that note, wish you all a fantastic weekend, and I'll see you in the next episode.